What's up, everybody? This is Mr. Cat Jesus with not commentary. That's ridiculous. That'd be video games. This is not real life, but it's about podcast and podcasts I personally listen to and I recommend. So this is kind of like my perfected list of podcasts I listen to. So bear with me. The first one I listen to is This American Life, as you see here. This American Life is basically a storytelling podcast where on average they have three podcasts a week. I mean, not three podcasts, three stories a week and a podcast every week. And they tell really fascinating stories about either everyday life in America or like extravagant life. An episode I recommend would be Harper High School, the episode right here. It's honestly, it's breathtaking, the situation in Chicago. So if you need to check out something, Harper High School. Podcast Beyond. Podcast. I collect all the IGN podcasts together. There's Podcast Beyond, there's Game Scoop, and then there's an additional. What's that podcast called? There's Podcast Unlock and Nintendo Voice Chat. I'll have links to the IGN podcast website, but they're gaming podcasts and they throw in some like pop culture humor into it too. So it's actually entertaining to listen. These IGN podcasts and This American Life span 1 hour on average. The next thing I also grouped together is ESPN, the BS Report with Bill Simmons. That's the full name. The BS Report is the short form. The Grantland Pop Culture and Grantland Sports. They're all one unit, but I think they provide the best podcast, especially in terms of commentary. Podcast inside the network that I recommend is the Jalen Rose Report. If you really like basketball as I do, it's honestly one of the funniest things to hear like a former player talk about just his experiences in NBA, everything he learned, and he has pretty funny stories as well. For something more serious, there's the Triangle where there's the Triangle. It's a pretty entertaining podcast as well. It's not as entertaining. It's more serious, but it's more serious related to sports, and I recommend it for if you do like sports. The next podcast I recommend is and then they have the pop culture side of it, as you see here, Grantland Pop Culture. And the podcast, I only really like one podcast here, but it's a really great podcast that I subscribe to everything. Oh, actually two. The Andy Greenwald podcast, where they talk about TV. Yeah, we basically talks about TV and Hollywood prospectus. They're basically the same thing in my opinion. Andy Greenwald is familiar with both these podcasts, and they talk about pop culture like music, movies, TV. Yeah, and they provide a pretty biased opinion, I have to say, but it's a respectable one at that. Then a part of the Grantland family is the BS Report. It's where Bill Simmons, the sports guy, interviews someone not every week. It's not like this week. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4 episodes were posted. But as you can see here, this one is about baseball. This is basketball. This is television, and this is also baseball. But it's because the Alex Rodriguez announcements. That's why there's so much. But he's basically an up-to-date, so all these. So for Grantland Sports and BS Report, I recommend you should be a sports fan for both of them. If you really like the NBA, I definitely recommend the Jalen Rose Report. And if you watch lots of TV and movies as I do, and pretty much you're in tune with pop culture, I recommend subscribing to the Pop Culture channel. Then finally, there's no podcast now, and as it's the off season of NBA basketball, but when the season starts, the Basketball Jones is an excellent podcast to listen to, and I recommend greatly. If you want to hear good episodes that aren't really time relevant, because this is news, I recommend listening to the Blank Jones. The Blank Jones was their last season off season podcast, where they basically give really bad advice, but they're hilarious doing it. Anyways, that's about it's a more compressed list, but you can get all these podcasts through your favorite RSS feeder, visiting their appropriate websites and iTunes, as I show here. So see you later, guys.